It is such an honor to be here at TEDx, where ideas really have a way of transcending the moment. As a public speaker and a media coach for pro athletes and teams and a veteran broadcast journalist, I really love and understand and appreciate the power of sharing one's story, especially when we have all of those rich chapters that offer context and really the examples that make us who we are. I often tell my clients, once you own your voice and your story, no one can take it from you. As you know, stories evolve. We're not stagnant individuals. At any given time, we can turn the page and write a brand new chapter. Well, speaking of chapters, the things that guide how we interface with one another, especially when it comes to our differences, it's changing. In essence, turning the page for us. I'm excited that we get to title this next chapter, and my hope is more people than not will call it Uniting Differences. Uniting differences is something that I learned in my work with pro sports, particularly professional American football. Imagine this, you've got 53 guys from all different backgrounds, all across the country, and in some cases, players from different parts of the globe coming together for one common goal, to win games. They're grinding, building, and growing together all the time, learning about one another. I've also learned in this space that not all the players have that same experience outside of this pro sports ecosystem. Especially when it comes to Black and brown players, their individuality and their differences are not always accepted, their presence not always appreciated. I got to deep dive on this in my research for my dissertation called Humble Beginnings, a place-based narrative in need of repair. In this research, I interviewed 30 Black NFL players who define their childhood neighborhoods and experiences growing up as humble. The idea was to juxtapose their lived experience with the common media-driven rags to riches narrative, which essentially paints all of their stories as exactly the same. Black players from poor, dangerous, broken neighborhoods, and it is only because of their athleticism that they're able to make it out. What I found was pretty fascinating. First of all, yes, at the very core of it, there are similarities, how they describe their neighborhoods, the things that they were exposed to, lack of resources. There were lots of similarities there, but I learned that wasn't the whole story. In the end, I had 30 very unique stories, rich with so many chapters, giving us context, like how they dealt with their environments, the roles that they played, the support system that came in. So many chapters and variations that if we start to learn about them, it will start to shatter that one-size-fits-all narrative. Here's what I mean by that. One of my absolute favorite questions in that research was, if you could go back to your childhood community and insert one thing, what would it be? The common narrative says it would be a community center. That wasn't even the first thing I heard. The first thing I heard was a library in my community so I don't have to get on the bus just to read a new book. Another player shared he wished that he had a parent or adult at home just to check his homework. Those are just a couple of the many examples that were so different than the narrative. So that's the one thing that I learned that really stood out from this research. The other thing, many of these players are tethered to what people believe about Black and brown marginalized neighborhoods. And that is so ingrained that when these guys show up in different environments, different places and spaces, especially more affluent neighborhoods, it is often assumed that they're an athlete or an entertainer and that there are no other pathways to success. For example, one of the athletes shared with me he had just signed with a brand new team, new city, new neighborhood that he's living in, a very nice one. And one day after practice, he's heading home, he stops at a local store. When he's at the counter, the clerk says, after looking him up and then up and down again. They say, "You must be an athlete." The player responds by saying, "Well, what made you say that?" The clerk's response, "I know what y'all look like." Another example, a player shared with me he was out to dinner with his wife and children at a very nice restaurant, very upscale. He was more of a household name. He had been with the team for a long time, very recognizable. After sitting there for a while, eating and talking, someone comes up to the table. But instead of asking for his autograph, which he was used to, they said, "Wow, your kids are so well behaved." He and his wife interpreted that to mean that there was an assumption that they wouldn't be, which, as you can imagine, led to some pretty awkward conversations with the kids about why they were singled out when they thought they were fitting in. When people are singled out because of assumptions, it reinforces differences and hinders inclusion. So what is the solution? How can we replicate what's happening in these pro-sports ecosystems where, in many cases, they're environments where people and individuals feel appreciated for their differences, respected and honored for their contributions? I say breadcrumbs. Yes, breadcrumbs. Learning about the world around us a little bit at a time, bite-sized pieces. Now, some people may think of breadcrumbs as what's left behind, really not amounting to much. But over time, if you collect those breadcrumbs, they really do add up. Think about a movie that you've seen about an elite team, or maybe a documentary about a team that starts off fragmented and then rallies to win a championship. As they pursue this one common goal, they're learning so much about each other, how they communicate, how they deal with adversity. They're learning about different things in their backgrounds, in their cultures, even exchanging stories over eating or maybe working out. It's no surprise to hear them talk about different parts of their lives. Over the course of a season, they build this camaraderie. They build a trust and reliance on one another. All the while learning cultural cues. We can do that too. The next time you're at a checkout line at the grocery store or maybe the mall and someone in front of you or behind you, maybe they're not someone you'd normally speak with, why don't you strike up a conversation? You can learn so much in that quick interaction. That creates breadcrumbs. Maybe you're at a game watching your child play, or maybe a fundraiser, and someone walks in and because of how they're dressed or what they do or don't do, it triggers you. Instead of staying triggered, why not interrupt that and ask yourself, is what I really believe about this person or the group I think they represent, is it really true in this moment? More breadcrumbs. Take it a step further, start a conversation. Now, you might hear something that reinforces everything you thought about that person or a group, but you might hear something completely different than any assumption or past experience. Breadcrumbs, breadcrumbs, breadcrumbs. What if we really did this? What if we really took a page out of this pro sports book? But instead of the common goal being to win games, our common goal is positively contributing to humanity, making our individual assignments to slowly expand beyond our circles, learn about the world around us a little bit at a time, using this breadcrumb approach, so that the next clerk won't assume that a black man with an athletic physique is an athlete. They might actually say, I haven't seen you around here before. I haven't seen you around here before. What brings you to our town? Breadcrumbs here, breadcrumbs there. Pretty soon, you've got a slice of bread. Then you rinse and repeat, you've got a couple of slices working toward a loaf. I believe this approach creates long-lasting, incremental change that increases all of our capacity to be more accepting and appreciative of the differences that we have, uniting us along the way. So, as you continue to own your voice and story, I hope you'll consider a chapter called Uniting Differences via Breadcrumbs. Thank you.